Hello and welcome back to the Fan Zone on this final day of the 2023 Lemure National Dressage Championships in the wonderful setting that is Somerford Park in Cheshire. We've had some fantastic guests and I'm delighted to be joined by three very special people now. It's Bret and Rosie Willson from Bret Willson International and Caroline Bowler from our legal partners Rotheras Solicitors. Welcome to you all. How are we? Are we good?
Good, thank you.
Good. Rosie, we'll start with you. National Championships. What a wonderful couple of days. How has it been for you?
It's been fantastic. The weather's been really great. Like, you know, it's something that we look forward to every year, whether we've got horses competing or not. We get together with all our friends and yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, Bret, it's a really great social event, isn't it? It's bringing the dressage community together. And I guess from a business perspective, it's great to catch up with customers and clients. And what a wonderful way to kind of enjoy this event.
Yeah, it is. You know, the lovely thing about the National Championships is we don't see so many people throughout the year. But actually, it's the one event a year that everybody comes together. You see people that you haven't seen maybe throughout the season. And it's a great time to catch up with people and obviously see the new talent and the new horses coming through. That's always a bonus for us. So yeah, it's and yeah, September's a lovely time of year. Hopefully, you know, we always wish to have lovely weather. As Rosie said, you know, this year it's been a little bit hit and miss, but you know, generally it's not raining, so that's good. But yeah, no, I love the National Championships.
Yeah, it's a very, very special event, a showcase in the equestrian calendar. Caroline, welcome. Legal partners, of course, Rotheras Solicitors, because the reason I've got my guests with me today is we want to talk about sourcing, buying, leasing and selling horses. And of course, as legal partners, that's the kind of advice that you obviously give to this industry.
Yeah, it's a big part of what we do. There are a lot of disputes and around the buying and selling of horses, so it's a big part of the work that I do. So yeah, this is a kind of a big client base of mine, sadly in some ways, but yeah, big, very contentious area. You know, sadly put that kind of spin on it, but there are a lot of
It's a massive, massive area that we're going to try and obviously cover in the next couple of minutes to kind of do it justice. But Bret, if I can start with you, top tips then on buying and selling horses successfully.
Oh wow.
Where do you start, isn't it?
Yeah, where you start. I think it very much depends on who's buying the horse, where you're buying from. You know, I think as we touched on before on the issue that we had in the BD magazine, you know, contracts are not something to be, you know, put off by. They're there for a purpose, and they serve to help both sides. You know, I think if there's inevitably, you know, when you buy a horse or when you have a horse vetted, there can be some things that are on a vet check that maybe. No horse, you know, is ever completely clean of, you know, whether it be you know, a chip or a, you know, an arthritis spot or something. And I think to safeguard both sides, it's good to have contracts in place so you can, everybody knows where they stand from the get-go. You know, and I think moving forward, you know, the horses now, especially at national level and international level, they are very expensive. You know, in today's society, as Caroline said, you know, it's not a, you know, litigation is unfortunately a part of, you know, can be a part of any business, and horses aren't any different. So yeah, I think the contractual side of buying horses is something that you know, it's a positive, it's not a negative.
It's like anything in life, Caroline, isn't it? You need that legal written document to protect yourself.
Yeah, and it always fascinates me, I think.
Can we just check your mic's on? Sorry, let's just check. Yes, if you can just, that's great. Maybe we can hear you a little bit. Thank you, Bret.
Can
That's
you hear
better.
Me now?
We
Yeah.
can hear you loud and clear. Thank you for that.
It does always fascinate me, though, in the horsey world, that you can be spending millions of pounds on these horses, and still a lot of business is done by strength of handshake. There's no contract in place.
A gentleman's agreement.
Yeah, and I just think there's hardly any other industry I can think of where there's no paperwork to support what you're buying, and there's almost a bit of a stigma, I think Bret touched on this, attached to like a contract when you're buying a horse, because it is this kind of, gentleman's kind of strength of handshake, kind of all trust. But when that breaks down and it's all based on a verbal agreement, rather than spending a little bit of money on a contract to start with, you can end up embroiled in litigation where, you're spending, easily a couple of £100,000 on sorting a dispute out based on a verbal agreement that, nobody can prove what each other said. So, and, to have that down in writing, to, just put it all down there, everybody knows where they stand to start with, it just reduces that kind of risk of litigation in the future so much. And it's something that I always obviously advocate from my perspective, but genuinely, as a litigator, by profession, I just think, it's so easy to get these contracts in place, but I hardly ever see them, sadly, even with horses where, they're spending millions, and it does fascinate me.
Well, I guess it turns into false economy, doesn't it? Because you think, okay, not have that documentation, but then you leave yourselves so exposed, don't you?
This is the problem, and I'm trying to kind of do publicity about the risks of not having a contract in place. You're so much more exposed, but you don't know what it is. There is still this stigma attached to kind of suggesting a contract should be in place to start with before you kind of embark upon this. It's all kind of trust, but as we know, relationships soon break down. It's similar. It's not just buying and selling horses. In a lot of these dressage competition horses, you'll have co-ownerships, syndicates in place, owner-rider agreements, but none of it is documented. So again, when it all goes wrong, litigation is kind of a very expensive route to resolving it, whereas just put it down in writing. It's so simple, so kind of easy to do.
Okay, Rosie, so we've established the significance of a written formal documentation. What would you say, with your experience, the commonly made mistakes in selling lease agreements?
I just going back to what these guys were saying, I think it gives people an amount of confidence, because I think a lot of people they find the whole process quite nerve-wracking. They get quite anxious about it.
Quite daunting.
Yeah, especially if they're not professionals and it's maybe the first time they're doing it. And then you do get people that go out there and try and do it by themselves or without anyone maybe showing them or advising them, and like these guys were saying, then again it's done on maybe a gentleman's handshake, and that often leads down different paths, which is not ideal. Whereas I think if they ask for help by people that are doing this day in day out, like myself and Bret, we know where to go, and the people we work with abroad, we have worked with for many years and trusted for many years, so we are confident. And I think a lot of people go out and they think that they have to do it alone, and they don't. We're here to make the whole process much more easy, relaxed, comfortable. We plan trips for them, pick them up, take them there, organize accommodation, things like that, to make the whole process enjoyable. Because you think, buying a gorgeous horse, it actually should be a very
should
enjoyable.
Be exciting,
it
shouldn't
it? This is your future superstar, and I think a lot of people actually find it quite a daunting process, especially when we have customers that have sponsors or investors. That's an awful lot of pressure on them to find that right horse, and And I think, you know, we can make the process a lot more simple. And I think a lot of people sometimes try or don't ask for the help and then try it and do it alone, and it can lead to maybe going, you know, to maybe the wrong place, or not the right place to find what they want.
Yeah. And Bret, not only is there kind of this general complexity, and that's why we're really trying to spread the word, spread awareness with this discussion, but I guess putting an added dimension to it is obviously if you're buying or selling a horse from overseas, because that comes with other challenges, doesn't it? Most notably, maybe language barriers, different rules and regulations. That's another challenge.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, it's amazing actually when you do go abroad nowadays in Holland and Germany and even Scandinavia, they all speak such wonderful English. We're all, perhaps as a nation, can be a little bit lazy with our languages, but it's amazing. They all speak such wonderful English. But yeah, it does. There are things, and you know, if you, as Rosie said, you know, if you do this, you know, on a weekly basis, you know how it works with the import, how it works with, you know, your foreign exchange, how it works with. So there are complexities, but going back to the, you know, the contract situation, I think what's important is, and to make really clear, is the contracts are in place for both sides.
Yeah.
That's vital, isn't it?
It is, because it's not just, you know, you're not just as a vendor, if you're selling a horse and you know, with the best will in the world, none of us are, you know, none of us are God, none of us know what's, you know, we can't see inside the horse, we don't know what, you know, necessarily what's going on. And sometimes, you know, we have it very often, you know, you can have 2-3 vets, all of which have a different opinion. You can send them the same set of x-rays, the same vet check, the same, you know, ultrasounds of legs and, you know, other things, and actually they don't even necessarily sometimes come up with the same conclusion. So with that being said, if they can't do that, you know, sometimes you do have to trust, you know, if you have a very good vet yourself and you trust them and you trust their knowledge and their judgment, I think you've got to listen to what they say. But if there are small things there that perhaps wouldn't put you off buying the horse, however, you know, you do want to say, well, this has been noted, should anything go wrong with the horse in this time, you know, it has to be a reasonable time, but if anything happens to the horse with that particular ailment in this time period, that is another thing that Caroline, could be put in the contract, couldn't it? And you know, to safeguard both sides. You know, it's got to be a fair thing on you know, for both sides.
And Caroline, it's a kind of a vast kind of subject that we're trying to cover in this chat, but anyone watching this, what would be your top 5 tips, shall we say, in terms of the contractual process?
I think one of the most important, you obviously need the basics in there about, you know, what it is you're buying. It's useful to state in there what you intend to use it for. But also, as Bret mentioned, kind of if there are any concerns, either whether they're picked up on the vetting or anything like that, just to mention that in the contract. And if the buyer is particularly concerned about that, then if that does flare up or whatever, then you put in there, you know, a right to return it on that basis. So then you're covering yourself. But also just kind of, if it's got one key area of litigation is if a horse has got kind of behavioural vices shortly after it's been purchased and somebody wants to reject it on the basis of those behavioural vices. Now, a lot of the time the seller will come back and say, well, I told you about that, but it was all done verbally. So if, as a seller, from a seller's perspective, you think you're disclosing any problems that it has got, that can be physical as well, physical or behavioural, state that in the contract, because that is key to protect yourself as a seller, and also as a buyer. Then you've got full disclosure of those problems, and I think that is generally a key area of litigation. I think that is crucial. Also, just touching upon the kind of overseas point, have a jurisdiction clause in there. Because if you are, well, the kind of the starting position, if there's no jurisdiction clause, is that the jurisdiction of the defendant in an action, so that's generally the seller, because the buyer is generally rejecting the horse and pursuing the seller, their jurisdiction will be the jurisdiction that applies in the event of a dispute. So if you're buying from England, somewhere in Europe, and you're having to pursue a claim, I don't know, Germany, Holland, wherever, it just adds a hurdle of kind of, you know, then you couldn't instruct me, for instance, or any other English lawyer, because we're not qualified to advise in that jurisdiction. So you then have to go and find a lawyer in that jurisdiction, and it just adds kind of complications. So I'd say kind of get all kind of disclosed vices, any health issues in that contract, get a jurisdiction clause in there. I think they're your key elements that you need to cover. As I say, just in addition to kind of basics about what you are saying this horse is, you know, kind of it's, you know, because I have had cases, you know, where we've had cases based on age of the horse. I know that sounds, but, you know, document, I mean, that should be in the passport these days, but, you know, I've had cases where the passport don't match the horse. I've seen it all. So just put your basic details in there, put those kind of explanations in terms of what you're disclosing to buyer. And then also it's important to be clear on the basis upon which you can reject the horse and return it. You know, is the seller providing some kind of warranty, kind of in terms of you can return it if it's not suitable in 14, 28 days. There is legislation to help you if you're an individual buying from a business on that. But if it's a kind of private sale, then that's very important to have that kind of right of return in there.
Yeah, this contract really needs to be watertight because there's so many imponderables, aren't there? There's so many scenarios you have to protect yourself.
Yeah, and they are, you know, they are lengthy contracts, obviously, that I will prepare. But sadly, kind of, I have the benefit of everything, knowing everything that could go wrong in a contract. So I try and kind of, you know, cover all of those potential issues. So.
Well, that's why it's important to reach out to companies like yourselves and indeed, Rosie and Bret, your expertise in this field, because then it helps to advise. And of course, another element is the insurance, isn't it, Rosie?
Yeah, and obviously all these things that are taking part, like you've discussed, that has a massive bearing on the insurance, and that's something we also can help with. You know, a lot of people, I think they find it quite a daunting task because there is so much that comes with buying a horse. It is, you know, whether, you know, from the beginning to deciding and you know, what price, what age, all these things that you begin to think about when you start to think about buying a horse. And it's even with, you know, the people that are just buying their horse for enjoyment, or whether it's actually someone that's buying one for, you know, professionals that potentially want to sell on, which of course, like you said, like with the contracts and things, that's something you can always go back to. That's something that is always there. Then, you know, it's never going to go away. Yeah. You've got that proof of, you know, when you bought the horse. But the insurance thing, I think as well, it's something that I think another people that, you know, they struggle with, you know, who to go to or where to do and what insurance companies cover nowadays. Because like we were saying, like Bret was saying about, you know, when a horse is vetted, they're like people, you know, there's not, I think if we all got vetted, we'd all find something on our vetting. None of us are perfect.
What a frightening thought.
Exactly. I think if you x-rayed anybody, you'd find something. And it is the thing, you know. However, there is horses that go through their whole life absolutely fine and have things, you know, bits and pieces like Bret was saying. But the insurance, yeah, you know, it's going to the, you know, the right companies that can get you in a position where again you feel safe and comfortable moving forward. And I think again, if you're not doing it all the time, it's a daunting prospect for people. It really is. And we find it a lot, and even in actual fact, a lot of professionals that come to us to find horses, they in fact want to sometimes, you know, they want to buy them to produce, to sell. So for them, it's even more important. And when you've got a yard full of horses, obviously, you know, it's even more so, you know, the insurance point of view, you want to go somewhere where they can do the right thing for you in the best way, and make it's just safeguarding yourself. Yes. At the end, and that's what you want to feel like, that you tick all the boxes and you can say at the end of it all, I did the right thing, so that I've safeguarded myself. So, you know, we all know what horses are like. You know, they do funny things and have accidents, and they, you know, on a daily basis they do silly things, and you think, that's horses, you know, they're not robots, they're not computers, and things happen, and you've just got, I suppose it's like children, you've just got to give them the best you possibly can, and with the insurance situation, go to the best people. But it is also something we help with and advise with as well.
So Bret, to sum up, anyone watching this, it's a case of reaching out to professionals, to specialists like all of you, to get it right.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think you just, you know, there's people, I always say there's a man for every job. And I think if you're in a situation that you're unfamiliar with, you know, don't be frightened to reach out to somebody who does it on, yeah, you know, ask for help. Don't be frightened to reach out to someone that does it on a daily basis, whether that be a solicitor or an agent or a, you know, transport company or whoever it might be. Now, the import of horses now from abroad into the UK has become so complicated. Well, a lot more complicated than it was, and it's not something that maybe that we've touched on, but the paperwork alone for bringing horses into the UK now has probably doubled. So to reach out to people that actually do it on a daily basis, you know, find someone that you can work with, that you feel happy to work with and that you trust, and whether that be, you know, a company that can make a contract for you, whether that's someone that can deal with organising viewings to look at the horses, or whether that, you know, a transport company, reach out and speak to somebody that can, you know, that does it on a weekly or a daily basis.
I know what they're talking about, and I guess you'd endorse what Bret said, Caroline.
Yeah, and as I say, just to protect themselves really, and you know, it doesn't have to be, it's not in one party's favour or the other, it is the benefit of all concerned. And you're just reducing risk going forward. It's all about reducing risk and just knowing where everybody stands from the outset, I think. And just approaching it in a really kind of sensible manner, going into it kind of, you know, this is exactly where we stand going forward. And same as Rosie said, you can get that piece of paper out and say, right, in the event of a dispute here, this is what we agreed. So then, you know, which I shouldn't be saying, but then you don't have to resort to a lawyer to litigate it. So it's just a case of being sensible, and just, I think, just an awareness of that, a contract's actually helpful, and you shouldn't be afraid to enter into that. It's just for everybody's benefit, and I really do kind of want to endorse that kind of mentality, particularly, as I say, amongst the horse world, because I have not known any other industry that operates like the horse industry.
You know what's the other interesting thing? You know, we're sort of touching on the prices of horses now, whether they be national or international horses. You would never go and buy a house without a contract, would you?
I was going to say that, exactly that. You wouldn't, would you?
No, absolutely not.
So why should it be any different? Hopefully you found that discussion incredibly useful. I know I have. Thank you so much to all three of you for joining me on the Fan Zone on this final day of the 2023 Le Mans National Dressage Championships. It is about spreading the message. It is about spreading the word, and definitely worth listening to that and hopefully taking stock of that invaluable advice. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And just before I go, it is 25 years of British dressage, and there's a very special national convention which will be taking place on the 25th and 26th of November at Addington Equestrian. Charlotte Dujardin will be headlining the event. Some very, very special guests. Get your tickets now. They're on the British Dressage website, and there is a discount for BD members. They are selling like hotcakes, so don't delay. It's going to be a fabulous 2 days of celebration for this wonderful sport that we all love. But for now, thanks to our guests, and we will see you very soon here at the Fan Zone.